So the main feature on this next DVD is the fundamentals of attraction. But before we get into that, as you know from the last DVD when Future was going through the Love Systems triad model, the first two phases are approaching and transitioning. Now, we didn't actually cover this on the main stage for a couple of reasons. One is actually how to approach and how to transition. The theory is pretty straightforward, and there's no real reason to keep reinventing the wheel. Where most people have trouble with is in a couple of specific areas, usually their body language, their nonverbal communication, as well as what openers to use, like what do you start a conversation with, plus approach anxiety. And all of these things are dealt with in a couple of different ways. I mean, most of the people who have come to the Super Conference would have already read that chapter of Magic Bullets on approaching and transitioning, and that's actually a free chapter you can download. Magic Bullets is my book that basically covers the fundamentals of the Love Systems methodology. And if you go to the Magic Bullets site, lovesystems.com/magic-bullets, there should be a place there where you can at least download those free chapters in approaching and transitioning. And we also have that in the audio series at a couple of times. Both the very first interview is how to approach, and then there's another one on approach anxiety. So point being, the theory on this wasn't one that we really wanted to use main stage time for, so we used the breakout room a lot for approaching and transitioning exercises. And you'll see there where we coach individual guys on what types of openers might work best for them, and then we have them do practicing over and over and over again, because you get muscle memory on this kind of stuff. But really quickly, I want to go through just a couple specific areas just to keep in mind. Number one is what I call the eyes-feet reflex. And I think I talked about this a little bit in my opening talk, or my introductory talk. But when you see a woman with your eyes that you're attracted to, start moving your feet. I mean, the rest will take care of itself. But you need to actually approach. I mean, you need to make the first move as a man. Don't go into playing any sort of stupid eye contact games or find some cutesy way around it. Just man up and go over and talk to her. Because if you don't, somebody else who's studied love systems definitely will. So it's absolutely crucial that you do that. Have a couple openers in your head so that you never get to use that as an excuse not to approach. You've got a couple in your head. You don't have to have 5,000. I mean, the routines manual, which was actually written by the Don, who we're about to see in a moment. We've got a couple of volumes of it here, volume 1 and 2. There's chapters in both of those on openers. And, you'll find dozens and dozens of sort of opening, lines or opening conversations you can have with a woman. But, you don't need to know them all. Just grab a few that work for you and keep those in your head. So it's just automatic. You approach a woman, all right, it's, nighttime, she's at a nightclub, she's with a bunch of friends that are both men and women. All right, use this opener. Done. You don't need to think about it. And then if you know what you're going to say, and you also know what her likely response is going to be and where you likely are going to go from there, you don't have to think about this stuff. When I'm approaching a woman, what I'm saying at first is autopilot. So I'm getting to think about things like I'm looking around at the situation to see who she's with, see how she's reacting to things. I'm looking around logistically at where I'm going to take her. Because you remember the triad, it's emotionally, physically, and logistically. So, is there a quiet area I can take her? How am I going to adopt, a powerful body language position? Like, you would want to be the one that's, leaning back up against a wall and her facing you as opposed to vice versa. All sorts of things like that I'm thinking about. Or physically, opportunities to touch, when we're having that initial conversation. It's really hard to do that if you're struggling to figure out what the next word is. So that's why I really, definitely recommend having some practiced, tried and true openers. But as I said, we're not going to go too much into approaching and transitioning right now because the theory for that's fairly straightforward. It's, the difficulty of that is actually putting it into practice. And that's why usually the first hour or so at a boot camp or at the Super Conference, is usually taken up with solving anybody's approach anxiety, solving any issues with their approach game, so that for the whole rest of the boot camp, at the very least, they're approaching and starting conversations smoothly. We just try to knock that out right away. So, on to attraction. Now, without stealing the Dawn's thunder, because Scott does a great job at sort of covering a lot of different areas of attraction, just say a couple of things. One is attraction is both way easier than most people think, and a lot less useful by itself. Women get attracted all the time, several times a day, to different guys that they might see. That's fine, but women aren't going to always act on that attraction, or even most of the time act on that attraction. So getting attraction is not a week-long trench warfare, tug of war type of situation. Getting attraction happens very quickly. Within minutes of meeting a woman, she'll be attracted or not. And so then the whole rest of what we do with Love Systems is about solidifying that attraction and having her act on it. But initial attraction, you'll see, is actually fairly easy. The fundamental building blocks of attraction, the Dawn's going to get into those, but I highly recommend, especially when you're starting out, that teasing, role plays, and cold reads. These are your three basic tools in your arsenal: teasing, role plays, and cold reads. So, with those notes in mind, I'm about to turn you over to the Dawn. You're actually in great hands with Scott. He's one of our oldest, both in terms of age, actually, but I'm thinking in terms of years of training, oldest instructors with Love Systems. He's lived in America. He lives in Europe right now. He has a good balance. He's traveled the world. He understands how to adapt Love Systems to different situations. As I mentioned before, he's really an expert on routines. That's why he's the one who wrote the routines manual. But beyond that, I also want you to watch for his presence. He's got sort of a very quietly dominant personality, that I would say, and it's a type of attraction, or it's a type of personality that's very attractive to women. It doesn't fit for everyone, but if you're somebody you've got some of those characteristics as well, you definitely want to watch what the Dawn does. And as well, the Dawn is, of course, one of the things he's best known for is a few years ago when Dr. Phil called and had myself and him on his show, and he gave us a pretty big challenge. It's like, hey, take this nerdy guy, or take these nerdy guys, and give them a one-day seminar, and then we're going to take them to the nightclub and see how they do. And then, unbeknownst to us, they actually brought those women onto the show afterwards and debriefed them on how they were being picked up. It's pretty interesting. Actually, if you want to check out the video, we'll show you the link here. But anyway, I give you the Dawn.